Alright, for today's industry insight, we got quite a bit of a serious one. We're going to be discussing the idea of video games and addiction. If you missed the news this past week, the World Health Organization, or WHO, has confirmed or has officially ruled that gaming addiction can be classified as a disorder. I'm sorry about that. And what this means is that people will be able to associate playing too many video games in the same vein as gambling, smoking, drinking, and so on and so forth. And it's caused quite a bit of an uproar among gamers, members of the industry, and of course consumers. And this is one of those not so fun topics to talk about when it comes to the video game industry. And it's kind of been one of the industry's dirty little secrets for some time. Now, to begin with, let's get it out of the way. Video games can be addicting. Video games, like any activity, can release dopamine in your brain, which is a neurotransmitter that basically controls or affects the reward or pleasure centers of your brain. So, if you do something that you enjoy, it's going to make you want to keep doing it. And video games work in that same area as watching TV, going to movies, winning awards, smoking, gambling, you name it. And game developers and publishers have been making use of that for years. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they are lying. It's always been a part of the game industry, and it's quite frankly been a part of good game design. And we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But whenever we discuss the idea of video game addiction, especially over the last decade, most of you will probably associate that to the MMO genre. There have been many documentaries and news pieces about the dangers of playing too much WoW, too much EverQuest, and so on and so forth. And it wasn't until a few years ago that we started doing more in terms, or hearing more conversations regarding gambling and video games. And that was with the rise of games as a service, monetization, microtransactions, and everybody's compound word, loot box. But getting back to the MMO for a second. MMOs were one of the first major game genres that were designed around long-term play. Again, you weren't going to play World of Warcraft for 3 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours. No, you were going to play for dozens, if not hundreds of hours. And with more and more content coming together, and of course the social aspects kind of governing things as well, this kept people playing for, well, literally years of a single game. And some of those stories have been great. People have found or met their new relatives, made new relationships, had long-lasting friends and clubs develop from it. But on the other hand, there have been stories of people who have spent pretty much every waking moment playing a video game to the point of it being a serious health issue in the same way as gambling, drinking, and so on and so forth can do. And with that said, I know someone's about to comment this down below, but whenever we talk about addiction and the kind of pulls and what causes people to become even though people can become addicted to certain elements, it's more about the person's own biology and their mental state rather than the actual object or the cause of it itself. Somebody who would become addicted to gambling, they could very well become addicted to smoking. And they didn't become addicted to smoking, they could be a drinker. Or they could be a gambler, or they could play video games. But usually there's something in the person's own mental state or their own condition or livelihood that kind of sends them down that path. And if it's not video games, it could be something else. If you've watched these stories about people who become addicted to video games, they will always, or almost every time I've seen them, say something like this. That their lives didn't have meaning, they felt that they didn't know what they wanted to do in life, they were maybe the last one picked in class, or they weren't popular. And now with this fantasy game or whatever, I can be so-and-so and group with hundreds of thousands of people, and I can forget about my own life. And that escapism is a major part of video games, and it's also a major part, quite frankly, of people becoming cults or joining cults, and that kind of mentality that if your life is bad, come do this, and now you don't have to worry about it anymore. But even with that said, and the fact that if it wasn't one thing, it would be another, like I said at the start, video games still can promote addictive qualities. Again, any activity that is pleasurable can release dopamine in your brain. And developers and publishers have known this for years. But the question, and this is where we get very philosophical and tough, where is that line? At what point does this become malicious? Because as I said, great game designs and the best video games have addicting qualities or addictive qualities to them. For instance, during the 90s, Firaxis ran a campaign for, I believe it was either Civ 3 or Civ 4, with the idea of Civ Anon, or essentially Alcoholics Anonymous, but the Civilization version. And anyone who's played strategy games has probably heard the rallying cry of just one more turn when it comes to playing these games. Because there's always something new to do. There's always another choice to be made. And that kind of hook is what keeps people playing these games for dozens and, again, hundreds of hours. In some cases, it could just be that the game is really great. And again, if you find something that you enjoy and you're getting that dopamine release, you're going to want to keep doing it again and again and again. I've spent over 1,000 hours playing Left 4 Dead. I know people who have spent several thousand hours playing Team Fortress. And again, going back to the MMO genre, there are people who have spent years playing these games. And in many of these cases, these games are just really that good. And when a game gets that core gameplay loop and the progression curve right, it keeps people coming back. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it raises that question. Is there, when it comes to video games, too much of a good thing? Now, we haven't talked about loot boxes and microtransactions yet. We'll be coming to that in the next few seconds. But with traditional video games, this is where I don't know. I have to argue against the World Health Organization classifying gaming disorder or gaming as a disorder along these lines. Because again, that becomes a very blanket statement. Are they saying that playing too much Mario is bad for your health? What about, of course, the hot topic today, what about Fortnite? Is the fact that people keep going back to playing Civilization a cause for concern? And like I said a few minutes ago, when it comes to people who do have those addictive personalities, it's usually something else going on that's being masked by whatever it is the activity that they're doing. But the other side of things, and probably why this is becoming more and more of a topic, of course, is the idea of microtransactions. As we've said before, when it comes to monetization and the use of microtransactions in video games, they are very much aimed at the same psychological pulls as the gambling industry. You have bright lights, very popular fonts, and trying to confuse the person with deals and special rewards that are really just aimed against them. It's not about delivering a quality experience. It's about saying, hey, you want to get advantage over your friends? Give us $99.99. But wait, if you buy it right now, we'll drop it down to $50. That's a $3,000 value for you. Oh, you're having trouble in this game? Why don't you just skip it for $2? Oh, you're not doing so well. You need to spend more. Get more currency. It's on sale. And these predatory practices are serious concerns. It's stuff that I've been talking about for years. My friend Ramin has been. I need to get back. I'm going to get back in touch with him after I'm done with this video. Maybe we'll have another 3-hour chat about this. But when it comes to the free-to-play and heavily monetized or monetization elements, they are very much trying to combine the same dopamine-releasing aspects of video games with the addictive pulls of gambling, which again, gambling also releases dopamine. And the more you get hooked on it, the harder it is to pull away. This is why many games are whale focused. Because once they get you to spend that $100 or $200 or whatever, they know you're going to make that decision a lot easier the next time, and the next time, and so on and so forth until you run out of money. And again, when we talk about these elements, be it great game design or the microtransaction practices, they work. There is no denying that these elements work. It's why Clash of Clans is so popular, Candy Crush Saga, even why games like Fortnite and World of Warcraft and so on and so forth are still being played. Because they keep those dopamine levels up. And I am not an expert in this, and I'm sure we get Ramin back on, he'll go more into detail about what happens when you're exposed or when your brain is releasing too much dopamine. But again, with this topic, it raises some very serious concerns about where do we draw that line. Again, I do think that when it comes to video games or the idea of gaming addiction, it's more or less on the gambling and the monetization side rather than it is on the gameplay. Because if we start trying to ban or restrict video games, that also means banning and restricting drinking, gambling, smoking, and so on and so forth. And until the day that happens, you really can't do one or the other. Because as we've said, when it comes to these topics, one person who plays video games, or 10 different people who play Fortnite, that doesn't mean they're all going to become addicted to it. Just like with smoking, or with drinking, or with any activity that can release dopamine, can potentially cause that kind of addictive quality or addiction nature. But it's usually on a person-by-person basis. And again, video games have always been the easy-to-go target, or shooting fish in the barrel. Whether it was with violence in the 90s, violence in the thousands, and now with gambling today. But with that said, though, there are still serious concerns about what it means to design games to be so addictive. Is it really a good practice to make a game that people want to spend 500 to 1,000 hours playing? And if we go further, can we have ethical monetization purchases or ethical transactions? Again, when I spoke to Ramin, he certainly thinks so, and I do as well. But at the end of the day, will having video games be part of a disorder or as a disease actually mean anything? I really don't know. And while short term we're seeing everybody yelling and raving about it, I'm sure if you're watching this right now, there's probably several dozen videos about people saying that video games aren't addictive and, they're all just full of crap and so on and so forth. But like I said, video games by their very nature, like any pleasurable activity, can lead to addiction. And what we do with that information, what we do with how we design our games, is a major point. Not every game is going to drive someone to spend 20 hours sitting in front of their computer or in front of their TV playing it. But when we design a really great game like that, is that the same as monetization? Again, I don't think so, but I'm curious what you guys think. And just to wrap things up, again, I don't see a video game addiction or a video game disease being all that worthwhile. Because again, I think it's obscuring the actual issues at work. Whether it is predatory monetization, a person's own mental state, and even just what it means to become addicted to a product to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean the game industry is without a dog in the fight. Because again, designers know how to keep people playing. And when that's used ethically, it can be attributed to some very great games. Again, no one's going to be talking about Mario addiction in the near future. But what about people who do spend 10 to 15 hours a day playing a game like Call of Duty? What about people who, when a new game comes out, or when they really want to play a game, they just completely shut down everything else in their lives? That whole thing, for instance, the Call of Duty commercial that shows them getting the gang back together and the guy leaving his wife and kids to go play Call of Duty, on one hand, that may be a little bit funny, but it's kind of at the heart of this issue when it comes to designing games along these lines. But I am most not certainly wow, sorry about that. I am certainly not, there we go, going to be solving this in a 15-minute long video. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Check back for more daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And if there are any other topics you'd like me to look at, please let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Before we get to the credits, I just want to give a quick shout out to the fans and supporters over on patreon.com/gwbicer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. If you'd like to suggest games for me to cover or topics to talk about, let me know in the comments below. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on design, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the Game Wisdom Patreon, you can find us on there on patreon.com/gwbicer. $1 will get you into our private Discord channel where we talk game topics and more. $5 will get you voting privileges for any major event, including the Saturday Night Grab Bag, Patreon-funded goals, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy more videos here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel.